Tahisha,
Hello, how are you?
you know, yeah, I'm gonna take a sip of tea. How are you?
I'm good. You know, it's been a it's been a week, right?
Well, before I go into that, let me just welcome anybody who's joining us today or who will join us today. Welcome to MT Fridays. We are filling the brain drain one unscripted conversation at a time. I am your co-host, Melonya Johnson, and you are.
Tahitia Timmons, and we're muddling through this stuff just like you.
Yep, we are. And I have to say that I'm muddling through it very angrily. Yep. I'm just an angry bird.
All right, well, let's unpack that.
What are you bringing to the table today?
Oh my gosh. So what am I bringing to the table today? I thought to myself, is it the dismantling of the education department? Is it the Columbia University and their issues that are going on right now? They've been asked to turn over control of their Middle Eastern Studies department. There's a certain word for it. I don't know because there's just so much. And then I also thought, well, I'm a health person. Should I not be thinking about what is going on there? Is it like, should we let the avian flu run rampant through all the chickens or whatever birds, like, natural immunity, figure out who's strong? There's just so much. So I'm going to bring a little bit of everything, I think. We're just going to converse because it's been, there's been a lot of stuff that's come out. Uh,
I know there is a lot of stuff going on, and as a big part of me would have really have loved to bring something positive to the stage today, and because I think that's important. I know I had to take some time off this week just to kind of recalibrate and not be so angry. But I just can't miss an opportunity of sharing information that is pertinent. And I thought today, out of all the stories out there, I have two things, but under one category, and that is the gaslighting of American racism that has gone on since 2008, since former President Obama was elected president. I think uh, white America has tried to make us believe that racism was a sort of a figment of our imagination. It no longer exists. Look, we had a black president, right? But anybody who has been part of the black world here in the United States, or even people of color, they know that racism hadn't ended. And so I wanted to talk about two things because it so quickly, once someone got into power that was a racist, how other people and companies uncloak themselves so quickly.
mm.
And so I wanted to talk about the Trump's executive order that erases the ban on segregation for federal contractors, right? So now, segregation is back on the table, right? And I also wanted to talk about an article, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't done a deep dive into these things. The other one was the Marine Corps is tightening its rules on shaving, and
Oh, the hair stuff.
yes, and really the insidious plot behind that movement. Again, to really remove black men, because the challenge that the focus of this really focuses on a condition that black men have, and so they're really trying to whiten the armed forces. So that's where I'm coming from today.
Well, I love it. And you know what? I'll just throw this out there because it's such a strange opinion to have, but um there was a little note about perhaps we're going to go to war with China.
What the
And
hell?
and so the lightening of the armed forces in this case might not be a bad thing. I'll just throw that out there. Like,
But yeah, but except for they're going to use
well, it's going to be drones and technology, and nobody, like, it's going to be very different, a different type of war. But I don't know why that would be on the table, other than war is like it's a commerce builder, and it does make money for those who have oil and materials and weapons. And so, I mean, if you're going to rock the economy, you
yeah,
might want to distract people with a war.
but the
But
United
I don't know if we're that dumb.
well,
I don't
here's
know
the
though.
thing. The United
I said I
States,
don't know.
they don't want China smoke, okay? They don't, because China is like, they're one of the largest populations on the planet.
Man,
You don't want their smoke. That we don't. And I don't know if but here's the other thing too. With that same topic, they're allowing Elon Musk to sit at the table.
I
What
know he's everywhere. Like, why
and
don't we just say he's the president at this point? You know,
okay.
I,
So
I'm
see,
just. I mean, this is a meandering. I mean, it's an unscripted conversation.
yeah,
I'm going to take
I
it where I'm
know.
going to take it. So
Let's
let's go.
go.
Yeah.
All right. What are you starting off with? I know I just saw that today with China. I said we trying to get okay, so who are we not beefing with? But you don't
Uh,
want China smoke. I'm saying nobody threatens China. Like, what are
we're
you talking
beefing
about?
with ourselves. So, all right, let's get into it. I actually, since they all interrelate, let's just start off with a conversation on racism in America, the maybe war. Like, they're all interrelated.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, I'm furious, to be quite frank. I'm really furious uh, that um, that racist white people have used DEI as a weapon,
Mm.
right? And DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, those words all by
Which
themselves.
I did a talk, or I did something last night with the International Coaching Federation, and one of the coaches there, one of the gentlemen there, he said, when we say DEI, many people don't know what that is, but when you say diversity, equity, inclusion, when you say the words, right? Who doesn't want diversity in classrooms? Who doesn't want sharing of minds? Like, then you pin people down into actually saying, well, I don't want that. I want only same thought, right?
Right. Tell
But
me
when you
which.
say DEI, it's very easy for
Yeah.
people
That's
to go, well, I don't want that acronym.
That's
Like,
why I just spelled it out. Diversity,
yeah.
equity, and inclusion. Which one of those are you not in
Mhm.
agreement with? You don't believe in equity, you don't believe in diversity, you don't believe in inclusion. Please expound on that, right?
Yeah.
So when they have demonized diversity, equity, and inclusion, and tried to make it seem that white folks were somehow being reversed, we're suffering from reverse racism, it's really gaslighting. And diversity, equity, inclusion is a result of systemic racism,
Mhm.
right? And since 2008, I will say, even since really the assassination of Martin Luther King, right? I'll go back 60 years, since the Civil Rights Act. I think,
Which they're trying to dismantle.
right, which they're trying to dismantle. Why we have lulled ourselves into believing that we had arrived at something. But as soon as the right person
And
got
I'm
in
going to
power,
pop in and say this. Mixed babies does not mean that we have arrived anywhere. As a mixed baby of the
Biracial.
70s,
Don't call it. I don't like
you
the
know,
word mixed. I don't like
well, no, I'm
it.
not biracial because I'm multiple races.
Or
So
multiracial.
mixed, multiracial, mixed race babies, that does not, the ability to have interracial babies does not mean that we've gotten anywhere,
We
really.
haven't gotten anywhere
Like
because
that is an interpersonal relationship. So stop showing this melty pot of people getting along. That is not,
it's
we haven't
gaslighting.
gotten anywhere.
We
Yeah, it's smart
haven't.
gaslighting.
It's gaslighting. And so as soon as the right agent gets into office, right? It's they go after the things that we have fought for, to make life equal, equitable, livable, right? And so now you have removed that ban. What real with that, what purpose does that serve except to hurt Black people, right? I
Well,
mean, really,
and
what
I
reversing that
And I just want to add this. It also harms white people too, because it puts out this image that all white people want this, that all white people are a monolith and think the same way. And it polarizes us against each other because those who we've seen this where people say, well, I don't think like that. Like the blue wristbands with women saying, well, I didn't support those actions that Trump was talking about. Like it takes a group of people and says, you're all this in this one category and you all want this one thing. I don't believe that all white people are racist, but they lean into the idea that all white people are racist. And so I saw something recently. It was an Instagram of post, and he was talking about, there have been white abolitionists and white anti-racist people who have fought for the cause. Why don't we know their names? Like, why are they hidden? Why are they hidden? I have a thought about that. They don't want white people to know that not everybody is like along this line of white racism. What if we knew those names? Like, we can't even name in the whole history of this country. We can't name, like he said, name 5 people that were white that fought against slavery, that fought against racism, that fought for equality. And like people really struggled, and I struggled to think of like who are 5 white activists who have fought against this, like off the top of my head. Who did I learn about in school? And so I will say, when they talk about they don't want to teach history that is in everyone's history, they're also losing their own history, right? Because I mean, other than John Brown, who can you think of? John Brown, Harriet Beecher Stowe, which that's controversial because, some people say, well, was she anti-racist? I believe for the period she was in, yes. Because I also don't think you can judge people by what we do today. But when you think about, who can you name from school? Who were you taught about?
and I think that you bring up a different perspective on this. What I'm talking about is generalized. I think we've all been gaslit, so to speak, to become complacent, right? With the few people who were able to get the titles and to get the jobs and to move into more middle class economies, right? We fooled ourselves into thinking that we had somehow abated or lessened the impact of racism in this country, and we haven't. It's always been there. When we talk about microaggressions, when we talk about the realities of what it is to live and work in the United States, folks often try to make us feel that it's a figment of our imagination, that there is no racism. But in 3 months, we have seen just how racist this country has always been, right? And I think what really highlighted to me the mentality of this country was when we were having discussions about the H-1 visa,
Mm.
whatever, and Elon and Trump said, yeah, you know, we use it all the time, and we can get really smart people, and we don't have to pay them, you know, the same as we would Americans. So, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, see, that's the slave master mentality. We're always going to build America, and it's going to be on the backs of brown people, black and brown
Well,
people.
and it's justified through
But,
capitalism.
but let me finish. But but they're always going to be indentured servants. We're always going to have that mindset. And again, I think we've ignored some things because we focus so much on consumerism, and we focus so much on just trying to climb up the ladder and try to deal with the individual racism that we ourselves have to deal with, that we lost sight of the big picture. And the big picture is that the same folks who you know, still champion the Confederate flag, they're generation after generation after generation of racists who create new generations of racists in this country. And as soon as a little bit of wiggle room was made possible, now we see we have people, Confederate flag waving racists coming into Black communities, harassing them to the point where Black people in these communities are now armed, right? You know, we're supposedly the threat, but you're coming to our communities with
Mm.
guns and harassment. So, you know, the reality is that there's no peace here in the United States for Black people. We're not going anywhere. Get it straight. We're not
Which
going anywhere.
Which brings the question, because like we talked about a lot of stuff at the beginning, and I started thinking about the fact a lot of the moves are what they're talking about. Some of our funds and things, and the federal government coming in and having such an authoritative control over the states. The question then asks, are the states better off without the federal government? And the reason why I say this is because when we think about the dismantling, like this is, I'm going to tie them all together. The dismantling of the Department of Education. One of the things in there, because one of the questions is what happens with the loans, right? The student loans. The thought is to turn a lot of that stuff back to the states. And we've heard this conversation before from the federal government that the states should be doing more, or the states should have power over this. So if the states now are doing the, like FEMA, even when people were asking for aid for everything that was going on with the wildfires in California, the answer was, well, California should take care of themselves, right? Like they don't need us. And he started having this language about the states doing things. So if the states are doing so much, what is the benefit of being in the federal government? And I'll say it again. I think I say it once every once every one of these shows. Why are the states not withdraw? Like, why are they not thinking about leaving? If there's no benefit of being with being in the United States for those who don't want to be a part of what's going on in the agenda, why are we staying? Like, we're not even going to have the Department of Education anymore. Like, what are we getting out of this other than potentially going into a war with China? Other than what are we getting at this point? Because you know, these ideas in the United States aren't going away. They seem to be clustered in certain
Yeah,
areas.
I get what you're
Should
saying,
if we're not getting anything, why should we
but here's the
continue to
problem.
participate?
Here's the problem. Here's the problem.
Canada's getting ready to fight us.
Well, everybody is.
Like,
Here's the
I
here's
don't want to be in a fight with neighbors and China.
well, here's the problem. Here's the problem. You know, when we start talking about the Department of Education, you know, red states often have the lowest
They're not
education
funded.
education rates. I
Yeah.
mean, really. So it then perpetuates the fact. So now they're going to take it into their own hands. So now we're going to have people reciting, the Bible in schools, and probably just getting rid of evolution and teaching that the earth was built in 7 days, and the world was created in 7 days, and all of that. I don't want to disparage anybody's religion, but again, if we have a president, these people who have not been taught to critically think, not been taught to research, not been taught to not vote against their own best interests, are still going to be in control. I think
Will they?
when you look
I'm
at
saying we don't participate
but
anymore.
when you look at the world,
I'm
right?
also in the
Do
Northeast.
you think that China is cutting back on its education? Do you
No, but
think that
I'm
no?
saying if the call is coming from within the house, don't we wanna excise that? Like, if we're saying that there is like, I'm in New Jersey, like, we invest so much money into our universities and our colleges here in New Jersey. I'm not very I'll be honest. I'm worried overall, but there's already an infrastructure in many of the states that where a lot of institutions sit, that I'm not as concerned for those states. Where it's going to hit people hard is where they haven't been funding their institutions of higher education, where they haven't been funding schools, where they don't have programs. That's what they're not talking about when they talk about flipping it back to the states. There will be losers in this. And
Yes, the country,
unfortunately,
the
it
country.
well, unfortunately, if you wanna talk about where it's gonna be truly located, it's gonna be the swath in the middle, right? So and then professors, leaders of educational institutions, they will leave, there'll be an exodus, and they'll go where they can have the ability to teach the way they want to.
So you
Um,
have a large swath of the country that is just undereducated, and
and
that's
which
not a viable country.
further polarizes us. We're already polarized as a Northeast versus West Coast versus the Midwest versus the South. Like, whether we admit it or not, regionally, we are polarized. So it just exacerbates that. So why are we all staying together? If we can't get our shit together, why are we staying together? We obviously don't like each other at this point.
Yeah, but that well, here's the thing: we are
We
the
can't
United.
even agree on anything,
Well, we are the United States, right?
only in name.
Right, but again, are we going to have separate presidents for every state? I mean, if we vote for a president, it means that
Okay.
what I,
I don't know if we need to do that because we could band as states into
but you
our
know
own
what?
coalition.
To
Our
be really
country, but
honest,
honestly, we are bigger than the EU. We have more people than the EU. If you look at the countries in the EU, some of them are smaller than our states, population wise, infrastructure wise. Like, I'm saying, be truly innovative. Like, what
yeah,
keeps us together?
but I get that. Okay, so I live in New
You're
York.
angry. I'm angry.
Well, but I live in New York, but I have family in Florida. So now I've got to go through how many different countries to get to Florida. Realistically, this is what Russia has wanted. They've been working on fracturing us as a country for probably about 30 or 40 years now, right? And so here we are. And so
United, we were strong.
yeah,
Divided, we are infighting.
right. But here's the thing: is naive as this might sound, I think there are more things that unite us, right? Just simple
Name
things.
5.
The fact that we all want to um, live
And
in
I'll
safe.
challenge the chat too.
No,
Can anybody name 5 things that
yeah,
unite us
I
as a
think
people at this
across
point?
the country,
We're not
people
gonna
want
fight
to
about.
live in safe neighborhoods. I think across the country, people want to be able to provide themselves and their families if they have some.
But
You know,
what does a safe neighborhood look like to you?
can I just finish a thought, please? You asked the
Yes.
question.
I
I'm going to
did.
deliver on it.
Okay.
Right? People want safe neighborhoods. They want affordable health care, right? They don't want to go bankrupt because somebody in their family got sick. They want their children to be safe, right? If they have children, they want, and some of us want a robust education. I think all people want their children to be educated. To what degree is something else. And I think that um, that most folks want a government that actually represents them and their needs. So I think those are 5 things that across the board that people can come together on. Most people want those things.
But how they want them implemented is very different, and that's what we're fighting about. You said safe neighborhoods. So safe neighborhoods, when you talk about segregation, if my mind feels that safe neighborhoods means no black people walking around my neighborhood, that to me is a safe neighborhood. No immigrants, no Muslims, no blacks, no Jews. Those used to be signs,
Well,
right, that were
to
up
be to, to
in
be
safe neighborhoods.
to be quite
So I'm just
okay.
I'm just answering your. So I think it's the interpretation of the things that we think that we all want and not having a common ground on that. Because I do think that there are certain areas that are very polarized around these topics and what they look like. You mentioned affordable health care. There are some who believe that the weak should just die, that we don't need to give health care to people. And we saw that when we talked about changing the livable wage in the United States and what that would involve for small businesses. So even though I say everybody wants healthcare and nobody thinks about it until they're sick, I don't know if everybody agrees in the United States we should pay for, everybody to have healthcare. Otherwise, I think universal healthcare would have been an easier sell. Um, you talked about schools that educate our children and good schools. Well, what does that look like? And schools where kids are safe. There's a whole debate right now about trans kids in schools, right? Like, should they be allowed to be their authentic selves? If I'm a parent of a trans kid, I want them to be safe. If I'm adamantly on the other side saying, like, I don't want this in my school, what does a safe school look like to me? And I will say there is a political party that is that's preying on these differences that you can clearly see that we have. Like, we're polarized. You can say you can create a spectrum of any of these topics you mentioned and find people on either end and get them polarized to fight against each other, and the middle is where we probably want to be, and that's where we're not hearing a lot of action from. You talked about representation in the United States by our politicians. For the truth is, brown and black faces and Asian bodies, we are not the majority in the United States yet. We can say that we're rising in numbers, but still, white individuals, white people are 51% of the population. So the majority is white, and they are represented. So, and there was another one in there, and I missed it. I didn't write it down. Tell me what the other one was.
I can't remember, to be honest with you.
But
Well,
I mean, this is what we're fighting around, right?
well,
Like,
no, well, I think there
as a
is. I
country.
think there is a middle, and I think that um, there are places to come together. I didn't say that it was an easy conversation, right? But to be really honest with you, I don't want to live on the fringe of anything, right? I don't want to live far right. I don't want to live far left, right? So
And I think that's how they're getting us right now because they're only highlighting
Right. So
the
so you pick some issues that are important to folks and then figure out what the middle is, right? What are the things that we can agree on? Like I said, and I go back to Luigi, whatever his name was, Mangione, when he killed the United Health Care CEO. That that stirred a commonality on both sides, okay, in terms of how folks thought about that, which means that there's other commonalities. Now, with everything that I said, there is racism, right? That impedes these things. But if you can start, you know what? Here's the thing. I don't have all the answers, and your rebuttal was brilliant. And now I don't have anything. So we just have to suffer from. I mean, really, because if you don't have a starting point, then you can never move forward. And so you presented the opposition. So let's go with there's no answer.
what
So
nah, you know what? I do honestly think, like, it seems like everybody hates, Elon Musk. So if we no, I don't wanna get in trouble and be on a list because I know, like, you
yeah,
can't say anything bad
you're
about
afraid.
him.
So you're
Uh
one of the afraid people.
that's a great topic, like, are we too afraid to even fight like, to even, uh,
Obviously.
like, well, yeah, I mean, if, who is it, Schumacher, if he's any example, like but like, it does seem like and since you mentioned Luigi, that the American public does seem to be coming to grips with, is it okay to have these super billionaires running shit and deciding whether we live or die? Like, that is like, I think that's bubbling up, just how much anything is for sale, in our country, including our government.
Well, Elon Musk is now, paying off judges who would support impeaching judges who go against the administration in upholding the Constitution. And again, I talk about ground news all the time. Is it's really interesting to see what stories are not going to the right and what stories are not going to the left, right? But we are in a, today is a really hard day for me. I'll be really honest with you, because my message these days have been, what have you done today to save democracy? And so I have made a commitment myself to do something every day to save a democracy that has never really represented me, my needs, or the needs of my ancestors. But I believe that people are equal. I believe in the tenets of this democracy, the theory of this democracy. So every day I spend time fighting it. Yesterday, I called Hakeem Jeffries almost every damn day to tell him he ain't shit. He's not the man for this time. I called Chuck Schumer, my representative here in New York State, almost every day to tell him, you're not the man for this time. You're not representing us. And when he voted against the CR resolution, when he voted in favor of it, he showed us who he was. And so did Kirsten Gillibrand, Kirsten
Oh, yeah.
Gillibrand, who is from New York State. I call her. Yesterday, I reached out to the New York Times because I know that there are protests going on in this country as well as around the world that never makes the front page of the New York Times. And I wrote them. I wrote their editorial people, and I said, where's the protest? Where's the voice of the people? We're not seeing in your publication the voice of the people, which would make those who are resisting this coup feel that they are isolated and alone. Every day, I promise to do something to save the democracy. And if people have not done, I participate in the economic boycotts. I only buy food and gas only the essentials, right? And looking for the organization, the national organization that I'm going to join that has some sort of effort. So if you're not fucking doing anything, but reading comments and by other influencers and whatnot, and complaining and clutching your pearls and whatever, you're complicit.
You know how you said my rebuttal? Your statement just then was powerful, powerful. New York Times, I really would love to see. I don't know anyone there, but
They responded to me.
Oh my goodness!
I wrote them yesterday. They responded to me.
Oh,
I was like, seriously? Oh. I'm hitting a nerve because I told them, I said, I will make it my life's work to let everyone know that the New York Times is a coward and complicit. Yes, I will. I absolutely will.
And that is absolutely serious.
Yes, it is. Because they are a part of this democracy. These are all checks and balances, free press, legislation, the legislative body, the executive body, the Supreme Court, the people, we the people. We are all the checks and balances.
And we are. But I'm gonna say, I think this administration, or the government has an advantage over the people, because we also have to survive, right? We have to work, we have to make money, and for many people, they're exhausted from multiple jobs. They're so tired, and to keep up on stuff, to know, like, who am I contacting? So I think you call out something really important for those of us who have, live streams, who have social media accounts, helping make it easier for people to reach out to their, like, putting stuff up. Here's where you can contact people. I know I posted something the other day about, here's how to reach out to your local representatives to is it
Whew, got too hot.
You got overheated. How and what issues are going on, and how they can reach out to people and contact people. I think that's so important for us to share. Like, how do you reach your representatives? What are the issues that are going on? They're repealing a lot of research grants and closing a lot of research departments, leaving a lot of patients who have been in the middle of medical studies without resources. I reposted something the other day that someone was talking about. So I think us continuing to share those things makes it slightly easier for those who can't spend time navigating, well, what should I be concerned about? Because the government does have the advantage of it's not our job to chronically.
Can you see this?
I can see that, but it's backwards.
Okay, that says Congress. I've got them in. I've got that number to reach my representatives in my phone book.
Put it in, and you know what? I would love to hear about because we have, there's so many people that have great tech skill, I'm auto emailing them. No, but what?
I'm going to push
Wait,
back.
Let me finish this. I would love to see more big marketing towards government officials, like roto dialers that would call them chronically, like, this is what we want, like using technology to send mass emails, like to find the chat GPT or not the chat GPT, but the form letter that is like, I put my name on it, I sign it, all of those petitions, having a better housing of that, to just have like this happen. Like, to inundate them with, this is what the people want.
And I think organizations like Indivisible are mounting these kind of, like I said, I think it's necessary to find your local and your national organizations, excuse me, so that you can move forward as a body. But I want to push back on something in terms of the amount of time that we have. We have plenty of time. We have plenty of time to spend hours on social media. We have plenty of time to watch all of our streaming channels. We have time, because it only takes me probably about less than 60 seconds to tell Hakeem Jeffries he ain't shit. It don't take that long.
I'm saying from the onset, right? So once you have it in there and you have a practice, it doesn't take that long. But it's the adding of the practice and making it easier for the
Well, it's a
general American public to,
it's a yeah,
because
you know
here's
what?
the thing. Here's the thing, we like things easy. And if
Yeah,
it
and
was
that's why
easy,
we're in the
it
problem
would be
that we are.
happening.
But that's why we
Well,
are
that's
where
why I'm
we are.
saying let's make it
The-
easier to for
you know what?
everyone to kind of click, click. There's
Fighting,
Congress.
yes, but you got to have an interest in it. You first have to understand that here we are in a battle. The 99% are in a battle against the 1%. Well, unless my math is wrong, and I'm not great at math, 99 is bigger than 1. We have the advantage,
We
okay?
do, but it's much like, okay, so elephants with their foot chains, right? Like here's my wonderment. Did that really hold the circus elephant in place? Or was it like could they not
Well,
escape?
they trained them from
We have
beginning.
been okay, so we've been trained that and we see this sort of like, well, there's nothing that I can do. My vote doesn't count because it's the electoral college anyways. What does it matter? We have been trained to be apathetic about our own place in government structure, in the running of our country. So we're almost asking people to go against years of training, and we talk about systematic racism and how that oppresses people. We've been trained to be apathetic about our function and our influence in how things get done. Like instead of I have the power to control my government, what I've been trained with is I have the power to buy different makeup, to buy a different shirt. Oh, I'm unhappy. Well, in between my algorithm of what comes through are all these ads that should soothe me and make me feel happier after seeing unhappy things. How do we actually get people to not feel apathetic when
Pain,
we're conditioned to be apathetic?
pain, pain.
Well, they
People
did
change
say
when
it's
they
going
feel
to
pain.
get painful.
People change when they feel pain, but but again, I cannot stress enough that folks need to walk away from cable news, because it's not news. And when you're talking to somebody, or you see in the comments when you're talking to, or there's a let me just put it this way. So now, okay, so now our economy is in the pooper, right? They're trying to, Fox News, the right is trying to blame Joe Biden. Now, anybody with, and I don't want to be insulting to people, but anyone that has any critical thinking abilities knows that when Joe Biden left office, we weren't having negative GDPs. We weren't, folks weren't laying off. The tech segment had been laying off people, right? But these mass layoffs, we're looking at, Social Security being gutted. We're looking at all of these things that are impacting the tariffs that are impacting, our economy. But they want to they're like, well, Trump inherited a disastrous economy. No, we didn't. But if that's the only place that you're getting information, then you might start to believe that is true. But it's not, And so
Well,
I'll be honest with you. That's one reason I always look forward to MT Fridays, but today I was like, I don't know if I'm in the headspace for it, to be honest with you, because I'm a thinking person, right? And I'm a fighter, and I want to see the fight. And I'm not even having a lot of conversations with people these days, because I don't want to talk about bullshit. I don't. because the only thing on my mind is like, if we're going back and going back to the segregated times, how far back are we going to take this?
And I just want to say there's $1 trillion in black money. And so do you want to pull that away? Like,
We should
there
be.
is well, that's why I say maybe the states should leave in this scenario. Like, we're going to go if we're going to implement and go back and past to the, segregation. But I do fear that. So Black Wall Street, right? So what happens if we do segregate? And it's for and just to be clear, it's for federal uh contracts. It's not for private, but we do know that federal tends to trickle down to private, and they follow each other. Um should we really be thinking about, and we've talked about this before, local, small, and support your own? Um, and so if American people start doing that, what happens to these mega companies like Walmart and Amazon and I don't know, like all of the ones that are out there? What happens to those? And so I would challenge large corporations to think about what is the impact of dividing up the country like this, of polarizing people, of making people afraid to buy. Now, I will say I've read some like economy stuff that says so far consumer faith hasn't gone away, and we've still been spending like, like everything is
I,
fine.
I've seen
I,
I've
I
seen something different to say that consumer confidence has weakened.
It's weakened, but it hasn't quite weakened as much as you would anticipate it would, considering everything that's going on. I'm not going to say that it hasn't weakened, but thinking about, so 60 years ago, did everybody have a credit card?
No, I mean, well, no, well, again, I go back to, I always say it, probably
We're a nation
every
of debt.
right. I always say, if you want to be educated as to why you think and shop and spend the way you do, watch the Century of the Self, the BBC documentary that shows how we were manipulated, right? Psychologically manipulated to be consumers and to be in debt, right? The credit cards didn't exist at some point until they realized that, wow, we can, if we extend them credit, they can get things right now, right? I grew up in a time where you put things on layaway, right? Layaway was something that, yes, I'm going to get that in 6 months and I'm going to pay on it, right? I'm going
It
to,
was delayed. We knew how to have delayed gratification.
right.
We knew how to pace ourselves. Most Americans had savings accounts. They were putting something aside. They were saving for retirement. They were saving for big purchases. So I will say that perhaps, and I know nothing about finances, but I will say that perhaps consumer confidence and the fact that it's weakening and not completely dissipating, and people aren't like, totally pulling away. I think that might be false, because we are now countries and worlds that rely on debt, or at least the US. Most Americans are holding on to some type of debt. And so if you falsely think that you have money that isn't yours, you're still going to be kind of spending, because I can always tap into those credit cards. And there's even this false belief right now, which I'll throw out, that, well, if the country really goes to shit, I won't have to pay that stuff up off. Like, oh, well, maybe if the Department of Education goes away, I don't have to pay back my loans. No, you will. They'll just be at a private place now that will have taken charge of them, because they'll have sold them off. So I think we're also holding on to this. Well, what if everything goes away and I don't owe anything? So we might see some more rabid spending, because what if the banks fold? Then I don't owe anything to these credit cards. That's
I
not
don't know.
true.
I
They
don't
will
know.
come and get. No,
Yeah,
I
I don't
think
know
there
if
is
people
a
are
little
thinking
bit
about
of
that.
that now. I've seen it. I've seen it with younger generations, comments on like I think there is a little bit of that false, well, what if this disappears?
Yeah, but and that again, I don't
And
know.
I say
I'll
that
be honest with
having
you.
a
Right now,
19-year-old.
after this conversation, I'll really tell you I feel kind of hopeless. I do.
No, because you know what? You know what my 19-year-old said? First, he said, well, IRS might go away and then we don't have to pay taxes because they're going to get rid of everything. I said, it doesn't really work like that. And then he was sad the other day when he was like, the US Department of Education, wait a second, that does a lot more than I thought it did. Which then I was like, well, I wonder how many people don't, because I think he's very smart and I think he's up on stuff. I wonder how many people don't really understand what the US Department of Education does. And so over this week, I've been watching sort of like him and his friends kind of come to this, well, we have to start getting more involved and thinking about like they're having deep conversations about what comes next, which I find in like actually like it brings me hope because I do feel like as people get woke like not to throw that word out there, but as people get aware of you know the potential bad things that could happen, I think more people are getting activated, more people are participating in local protests, more people are thinking about, well, what can I do as an individual, because our country is founded on the idea of freedom, and I think you
For
can't
white
have
people, it's founded on freedom for white people.
now I think let's but this is a great time to reinvent the world, right? So,
It
yeah, this
is,
country
and
was
so now I'm
founded
going to
on
push back.
freedom for white people, but we've also had freedom fighters for other groups, women, indigenous people, uh, Black Americans, right? So let's not just say, hey, like, yes, we have a majority that wants to hold on to their freedoms, but the truth is we all want to be free. And what
Well,
does that look like today?
yeah, but here's the thing.
What if we could have utopia?
Here's the thing, and again, I'm all for all of that, but here's the thing: the Democrats are not going to save us. They don't have a plan. They don't.
No, the people have to save
The
ourselves.
people have to save ourselves. And how many people are plugged in? I don't know.
I think more people are getting plugged in. I think more people are getting plugged in
I hope so.
because it's impacting them. It's affecting them. Government jobs that we thought would never go away are being impacted. Like when I was coming up, the dream was to get a government job.
And it's not even so much the jobs. I've been laid off,
Well,
so I know how that feels. It is the institutions that are being decimated that actually
it's what
protect
they
our rights.
represent.
Right. So, okay. So, so yes, the government will no longer hold your loans, but private institutions, private banks, right? But the regulations that are in place to prevent predatory lending and things of that nature that protect us, those agencies have been decimated. Those things, consumer protections, have been decimated, right? These and so when people cheer, well, there's some people who still cheer Elon Musk, even though he has gone into all of our information. We don't know what is being done with it, right? We don't know who it's been sold to, right? But even and the fact that he first decimated the agencies where they had some
Investigations on him.
investigations after, because he made this statement. He goes, if he doesn't win the election, I might go to jail. And that's, so we have two people in power who needed to have this presidency so they wouldn't go to jail, right? And so I don't I'm again, I say I'm a fighter, and I've made that commitment to fight every day, But today, this week, that's why I'm taking a little time, for myself. This week, I find it really challenging to think that people who are just consumed, just for the hell of it. One day I drove by Target because we've been boycotting Target, and the there are still cars parked in the parking lot, right? We are so conditioned to soothe ourselves with consuming and escapism, and what can I binge watch, and oh, what game can I play on my phone, or whatever the case may be, to lull ourselves into, until don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes, right? Don't They're going to be at the door, looking at us before we go, oh, this is problematic. I mean, and again, and that's why I'm going after the outlets, the news outlets, because it's like you are not showing the voice of the people. People need to know that they're not alone. How do you rouse up, the populace, the everyday folks? They need to have the information that there's a movement going on. And if they're not seeing it, you go into work, it's business as usual, oh, oh, we're going back to segregation. Well, let me just, file that somewhere in my body, and just go and put that happy face on when I step into the world, and pretend like my rights are not being, that we're not, that we're okay. And that now, two young men in Georgia, two young boys were, which I'm likely to believe that they were lynched. They were supposed to be going to Boston, but somehow they ended up 90 miles away from their home in some woods in a sundown town, shot. And the first thing that folks said, well, oh, it must have been a murder suicide. They were twins, close knit family. That's not something that would happen, and they wouldn't drive 90 miles to do it. So now we're opening the door for racist, violent people to attack us. But I'm supposed to show up in the world like it's okay. And so we need the people to actually give a damn.
Well, and I mean, this is probably not going to be cheerful, right? But nothing has changed. And so the one thing that I will say has happened recently is more blinders have come off people's eyes about just how far we have not come since the civil rights movement. And the only reason I say that is because I thought the world had changed in the 80s when I went on a trip with a friend, queer, like, two lesbians out in the world, punk looking girls. And we went to Tennessee. And that trip frightened the hell out of me. First of all, it's bad enough to be like traveling and from the north, like the New York area into in the 80s. Like it was obvious we were from the Northeast, but we were also gay. And like that was also like we went to rent a room at one point, and the lady was like, "Why would you not want two beds?" She was my girlfriend. And I was scared. I was like, you know what? This is maybe not the best idea, but it started out as a fun idea. We're going to stop at things along the way. Wasn't safe. Like it was an eye opening aha. And I thought, I will never go to the South again. I will never, ever drive through the South again. And then I went to a university for their doctoral program in the South. But I've always been terrified, and I have always thought there was a huge, like, line between where I'm not gonna say the Northeast is perfect because there's racists here, but I definitely felt like I could not breathe in the South. I definitely felt like I could not be authentic. I definitely felt as a Black person, and I had tattoos back then, which was not something that you had either. Like, I felt, like, very unsafe. I think about situations I've been in, and I'm like, "I'm thankful I made it through." But it opened my eyes to the fact that there was this myth that everybody was getting along, at least as a Northeasterner who hadn't traveled at the point. I was young. Um, and it opened my eyes to the fact that most people believe that we have moved so far the needle when we really haven't. There are places in this country that are truly, truly unsafe. And when you talked about sundown towns, for people who don't know what that is, those are towns you can't be in as a Black or brown person after sundown. And we have them in the Northeast because I remember there were towns that we did not travel in. My friends did not go to because we knew you would get pulled over by the cops. You would get in trouble. It didn't matter whether you were following. It was, what are you doing in this neighborhood? Are you trying to like? I knew about those things and I knew they existed, but the truth is that hasn't gone away. And in some ways, I am glad that we have been reawakened to the fact that we need to push harder and perhaps we need to innovate and change the way we're even thinking of ourselves as a country. Some people do not want to change.
No,
and if you don't want to change, maybe we need to look at, is this the map that we want to have? And who are the people who are on board with the trip? Where are we? And perhaps we need to remap the map. And I say maybe we join Canada. I like Canada.
But here's the thing too, 36%, I believe, of eligible voters didn't vote, right? And so I think that it's, if you want a different world, you actually have to work to make it a different world. And so you do. And so I'm going to, because
I know we're over time, but I do want to say this, like, what would we even do, right? Like, if the country came to this, like, we knew that there was a consensus that we truly did not agree with where the president and his advisor are going, what would happen next? And I'll just throw that out there. I'm not looking for an answer, but what is our recourse? Sit with that until the next time.
Well, thank you for a rousing conversation. Thank you for those who tuned in to us today. This is another episode of MT Fridays, Fighting the Brain Drain, one conversation at a time. Wishing you a week of peace, wishing all safety. And I'm going to leave us by saying, what did you do or will you do today to save our democracy? See you next Friday. Thanks for joining us on MT Fridays. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more insightful discussions every Friday. Remember, the brain drain stops here, so keep the conversation going by connecting with us on social media or visiting our website. Until next time, stay curious and keep filling your mind with knowledge. See you next week, Friday, on MT Fridays.